A guy I stood behind in the popcorn line lost his mind because the seasonal bucket wasn't the correct shade of festive red compared to the one released in 2018. He didn't just complain. He pulled out a professional color grading card and started lecturing the 16-year-old cashier on brand integrity. He held up the line for 20 minutes, demanding to speak to the head of creative design. When he was told that person wasn't on site, he threw his $25 popcorn on the floor and screamed that the magic was dead because of corporate greed. During the fireworks, a man in his late 30s brought a literal stepladder into the middle of the crowd so he could get a clear shot for his YouTube channel. When people behind him complained they couldn't see, he told them to invest in their own equipment or move to the back. He claimed his 2,000 subscribers were counting on him and that his work was more important than their vacation. Eventually, a security guard had to take the ladder away, and the man spent the rest of the show sobbing about his ruined career. I saw an influencer couple at Epcot refuse to leave their table at a high-end restaurant because they were waiting for the golden hour light to film a 3-minute TikTok. They had finished their meal an hour prior, and there was a massive line of hungry families waiting. When the manager asked them to move, the woman started filming the manager, calling him a dream killer, and told her followers to cancel the restaurant. They had to be physically escorted out while they screamed about their First Amendment right to content. I worked at the Haunted Mansion and once had a guest demand a private tour because he was a platinum-level fan. He claimed he knew more about the 999 Happy Haunts than the staff, and started correcting the script I was reciting. When I politely asked him to let the other guests enjoy the ride, he threatened to call the CEO, whom he claimed to have met at a convention. He spent the entire ride loudly narrating the errors in the animatronic movements, ruining the atmosphere for every other person in the stretching room. At a character meet and greet, an adult woman brought a rolling suitcase full of vintage memorabilia for Mickey Mouse to sign. When the handler told her Mickey could only sign 2 items per person to keep the line moving, she went into a full meltdown. She started crying, saying her inner child was being neglected and that she paid more in annual fees than the handler made in a year. She refused to move until Mickey signed every single item, effectively shutting down the line for 40 children waiting in the sun. I saw a man try to buy a child's spot in line for a new Star Wars ride for $100. When the parents said no, he got aggressive, telling them they were wasting the experience on a kid who doesn't even understand the political subtext of the rebellion. He argued that as a true fan who had seen the movies 500 times, he had a moral right to ride first. He followed the family for 20 minutes, heckling them and calling the kid a fake fan until security finally intervened and banned him for the day. A woman at the Animal Kingdom Lodge complained to the front desk because the giraffes were too far away from her balcony. She insisted that as a DVC member, she should have a summoning whistle or treats to bring them closer for her morning coffee photos. When the staff explained that the animals have free roam and aren't puppets, she accused them of ruining her birthday aesthetic and demanded a full refund for her $5,000 stay because the wildlife was being uncooperative and unprofessional. I watched a Disney adult couple have a screaming match in front of the castle because the husband missed the focus on a photo of his wife eating a Mickey-shaped pretzel. She made him buy a second $8 pretzel and stand in the same spot for another 30 minutes to get the lighting right. When a janitor walked into the background of the shot, she started screaming that he was polluting her feed and demanded his employee ID so she could report him for intentional photobombing. There was a guy who used to come to the park every day just to test the new employees on their knowledge of obscure Disney history. He would find the youngest-looking cast members and grill them on things like the exact date the plumbing was installed in Tomorrowland. If they didn't know, he would loudly call them imposters and tell everyone around them that the park had lowered its standards to the gutter. He was finally banned after he tried to enter a staff-only area to prove they were hiding original blueprints. I saw a woman use her double stroller as a battering ram to get through a crowd during a parade. The weird part? There were no children in the stroller. It was just filled with about 50 limited edition Stitch plushies. When she hit a man's ankle, he shouted in pain, and she yelled back, "My collectibles are worth more than your legs. Move!" She acted as if she was an emergency vehicle, screaming, "Make way for the Ohana," while shoving through a group of elderly tourists who were just trying to cross the street. I worked at a Disney resort gift shop, where an adult man tried to return a Spirit jersey he had clearly worn for an entire week, because it didn't get enough likes on Instagram. He claimed the colour was cursed and that it made him look washed out in his photos at the park. When I pointed out the sweat stains and the no returns after use policy, he threw the shirt at my face and called me a low-level gatekeeper. He then sat on the floor and refused to leave until I validated his emotional trauma. A group of Disney adults in the Jungle Cruise queue started a literal physical fight with a family because the family's toddler was talking during the pre-show. One of the adults told the parents, "This is a masterpiece of themed entertainment, not a daycare. Control your brat or leave." When the toddler started crying because the adult was shouting, the woman yelled, "See? Now the immersion is completely broken." Security had to pull them out of the line while they shouted about respecting the art of the Imagineers. I saw a man in his 50s get kicked out of a Disney Junior dance party because he was pushing toddlers out of the way to get closer to the characters. He claimed he was a vlogographer and needed clean footage without messy kids in the frame. When a mum asked him to step back, he told her that her child was a background extra in his life story and that he had seniority in the park. He actually tried to trip a 4-year-old who stole his shot with Fancy Nancy. It was the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. At the Be Our Guest restaurant, a woman started sobbing because she was seated in the West Wing instead of the ballroom. She claimed she had manifested the ballroom for months and that the staff was vibrating on a negative frequency by seating her in the dark room. She refused to look at the menu and spent an hour loudly reciting affirmations about how she was destined for greatness. When the Beast character walked by, she tried to grab his fur and beg him for a reassignment, causing the performer to nearly trip. I witnessed a man get into a heated argument with a cast member at the Small World ride because the boat wasn't vibrating at the frequency he expected. He claimed he had a specialized sensor that proved the motor was failing and that he was saving the park from a catastrophe. He refused to get out of the boat at the end of the ride, demanding to see the maintenance logs. He actually pulled out a screwdriver and tried to inspect the floorboards himself before security was called to drag him away. A woman in the Ratatouille line at Epcot started lecturing everyone around her about how the ride was mathematically inferior to the version in Paris. She had a notepad and was literally timing the delays between scenes with a stopwatch. If the ride paused for even 3 seconds, she would huff loudly and tell the tourists behind her, "This is why American Disney is a failure. You people have no standards." When a kid asked her to be quiet, she told the child he was the reason the franchise was declining into mediocrity. I saw an influencer try to reserve a public bench by the castle for 4 hours by taping a filming in progress sign to it. When an elderly veteran tried to sit down to rest, the woman started screaming that he was violating her workspace. She claimed she was providing free advertising for the park and that her intellectual property was being threatened by his presence. She actually tried to charge the man $50 for renting the space. Security eventually came and removed her tape, and she had a full-blown toddler tantrum. At the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, an adult woman showed up in a Disney-bound outfit and demanded that the fairy godmother's apprentices give her a full glitter makeover. When they told her the experience was strictly for children under 12, she started screaming about ageism and discrimination against the young at heart. She sat on the floor and started throwing her own glitter at the kids in the chairs, shouting, "If I can't be a princess, nobody can." She had to be physically carried out of the store while she hissed at the children. I saw a man try to bribe a Lightning Lane attendant with a rare Disney pin to let his group of 6 adults skip the 2-hour wait for Flight of Passage. When the attendant said no, the man started listing the market value of the pin, claiming it was worth $400, and that the attendant was too poor to understand the trade. He then started calling the attendant a class traitor for not helping a fellow enthusiast. He ended up throwing the pin into the bushes in a rage and stomping away while his friends looked mortified. During a pin trading event, I saw an adult man corner a 9-year-old boy who had a rare, hidden Mickey pin. The man tried to trick the kid by telling him the pin was toxic and made of lead, so the kid would trade it for a worthless common one. When the boy's dad stepped in, the man started screaming that he was curating a museum-grade collection and that the child was wasting a masterpiece. He actually tried to snatch the lanyard off the kid's neck before a bystander tackled him. He was banned for life. I worked at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and had a man come in with a custom lightsaber he had spent $1,000 on. He was furious because the color of the blade didn't match the specific hex code of the movie's blade. He demanded that I recalibrate the crystals in the middle of a busy shop. When I told him I couldn't do that, he started swinging the saber at the merchandise, claiming he was testing the durability of a fraud. He broke a $200 glass display and then tried to Jedi mind trick me into forgetting he did it. A woman at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride demanded the boat be stopped because she dropped her designer ears in the water. When told it was impossible to stop the ride for a $40 headband, she stood up while the boat was moving and tried to fish them out with her umbrella. She nearly fell overboard and triggered a safety shutdown of the entire ride. While hundreds of people were stuck in the dark, she was loudly complaining that Walt would have stopped the ride for a lady, completely ignoring the danger she caused. I saw a Disney adult man get into a fight with a Gaston performer because the performer wouldn't admit that the man had bigger biceps. The guy actually brought a tape measure and tried to wrap it around the performer's arm during the meet and greet. When Gaston made a joke about the guy's small ego, the man lost it and tried to wrestle him. He was shouting about how he paid for the costume and that he deserved respect from the help. He was tackled by security before he could lay a hand on the performer. An adult woman at the Frozen sing-along show brought her own professional microphone and a portable speaker so she could lead the crowd from her seat. When the ushers told her she couldn't use amplified sound, she claimed she was a professional Broadway consultant and that the performers were flat. She then proceeded to sing "Let It Go" at a deafening volume, intentionally hitting high notes to drown out everyone else. When the crowd booed her, she yelled, "You're all just jealous of my gift," and had to be dragged out.